Do I like BlackJack? Are you serious? Really? Fine. No, I don't like BlackJack. Because every second I'm around her, I'm reminded of a place that hurt me. Because every time I think I'm over it, she does something to remind me of how much it sucked. She's a walking, talking reminder of everything that I hate. Sometimes, I don't think I'll ever be over it till she's dead. But no matter how much she hurts me, I know it's nothing compared to how much she hurts herself. She seems to have this masochistic need to suffer for simply surviving. She runs on guilt and angst, and one day she's going to choke on it. And I hate it because there's nothing I can do to stop it. She's like an addict hooked on martyrdom. She'll sacrifice her body, happiness, sanity, and life trying to help others even if they don't deserve it. And she'll beat herself miserable when she fails. How can you like a person like that? How can you love a person like that? No more stupid questions.
When you get past all the twists and turns, universe-building lore, informational baggage, and the very well-written action sequences, Project Horizons is, at its core, a character's piece. To be specific, it's a first-person narrative that provides a deep deconstruction of its leading heroine's psychology throughout her many layers of complex emotional abuse and self-abuse, ranging from her many traumas, the way she deals with said traumas, her ever-growing need of redemption in a desperate attempt to escape her angst and guilt, and her hardcore masochism as a result of that, among many other things. The author does an impeccable job in exploring her personality, her relationships with her friends, and, subsequently, her friends' personality and their intertwining relationships with one another as perceived from her eyes and mind. This style of introspective narrative is conveyed through the clever use of both verbal and silent exchanges between characters, strong dream-like metaphors representing BlackJack's struggle, and, obviously, the various observations and tribulations from the protagonist herself, which is the whole point of adopting a first-person narrative style to begin with. This diegetic choice, which is more often applied to artistic pieces rather than epic sci-fi/fantasy storytelling, in the hands of the right author, proves to be a perfect vehicle to illustrate the complexity of a fictional persona that eludes the basic archetypical definitions. In that regard, Project Horizons might be the best character's piece of its category. Too bad it also wants to have a ridiculously contrived plot that involves way too many secret projects, conspiracies, political intrigues, and super-powered mutants that would make the X-Men go derpy hoops. Actually, that's not a flaw at all. That's all kinds of interesting. And if this was a lesser novel, then all the various transitions between action sequences involving equine manticore hybrids and the pony equivalent of Misplosion Man, the story progression, and the sheer mental anguish of BlackJack would have been awkward and harmful to a higher focus. As it stands, none of them hurts the seemingly perfect pacing and structural solidity of the story as a whole. What does hurt the very foundation of the Fallout Equestria universe itself in many subtle ways is the previously mentioned presence of this golden blood fellow as the epicenter of every single conspiracy and political intrigue during the Great Zebra War. Now, in the original novel, the reason why everything went boom was because the main six were separated from one another, locked themselves in their own individual ministries and projects trying to win the war, thus losing sight of what was really important: friendship! The world was destroyed because friendship failed, which is a refreshingly straightforward yet deeply explored theme that makes perfect sense with everything we know and understand about this universe. That's why, by simply implying that the apocalypse might have been the result of a series of overcomplicated subterfuges went horribly wrong because of the mistakes of one single unicorn, said larger-than-life theme falls out of context and gets completely undermined. All because the author was trying too hard to surpass the original story with more complicated background info, even though what made the original story so great in the first place was the underlying, simple immediateness of its message and the way it was conveyed through the characters' both personal and physical journey. And speaking of characters' journey, the biggest flaw in Project Horizons lies also in the author's biggest strength. He is very good in exploring his characters, but is not just as good in developing them once their inner struggles have been approached and expanded upon, choosing instead to add more and more misery to their lives, which fairly often ends up reprising and recycling the same reasons why they were suffering to begin with. Let's compare Little Pip's journey with BlackJack's to form an example. In the former's case, whenever a tragic, life-changing event occurs, it serves the purpose of developing the main character in some way or the other, occasionally halting her progression to give her a moment's pause and reflect about everything that's going utterly and horribly wrong, both around her and within her. Then her character eventually has to face her ultimate brutal test in chapter 34, which is one of the most defining moments of her growth. By overcoming this obstacle, she develops into a stronger heroine. The key to the success of this formula is balance. Tragedies and the such like only occur when they are useful to specific aspects of the story and or to the character's growth within her arc. That's not exactly the case for BlackJack. By the time her story reaches chapter 34, she's already gone through disembowelment, dismemberment, head traumas, hysteria, psychological breakdown, killing sprees, post-traumatic disorders, heavy radiation and enervation poisoning, mourning over a mania pony's death, schizophrenia, betrayal, extreme S&M, suffocation, and not one but two suicide attempts in the span of one chapter. Aside from 3 or 4 important events, including her tearful emotional reunion with P-21 and her return to her own stable, half the time all these painful occurrences serve the point of making BlackJack feel angsty and self-loathing for not being able to save ponies, or even monster ponies for that matter, for screwing up in some epic way or for slowly turning into a monster herself, which becomes redundant. When both the physical and psychological destruction of a character doesn't serve a purpose other than making her feel bad for virtually the same point over and over again, it stops being a compelling and tragic narrative and it starts being plain old torture. With that said, I cannot stress enough how decisively good are the various bits of genuine and subtle development happening when the characters try to deal with everything going on and start to genuinely rely on each other, the bits of exploration in which the author is at his strongest. In that regard, BlackJack and Glory's almost desperate attachment to one another oozes with heart and comfort, and the sex provides BlackJack with a psychological anchor for her overly compromised sanity. If you feel like drawing a line of comparison between Glory Jack and Homage Pip, by all means be my guest. And considering that at some point she starts hallucinating about an old ghostly card dealer that tells her all about the many ways she's going to fail, she kind of already lost her mind somewhere between the first slaughtered filly and her most inglorious homecoming. Next time, we shall take a look at the remaining cast, the story, and hopefully conclude this now 3-part review. This has been Madhog, and you've been suffering through Fanfiction R&R.